Noah is real and is possibly God, and you need to defeat him in order to get off this boat, which I think means this is technically a JRPG. Technically. My name is Graeldon, I'm on an impossible journey to review every Steam game in alphabetical order, and today we're playing 100animalease. Let's begin. The most surprising thing about this game is that it's not made in RPG Maker. The second most surprising thing is that despite all the flaws, the repetitive music, poorly written / translated dialogue, and the clashing graphics, I think I kind of like it. Let me explain. 100animalease was released on Steam on the 26th of December 2022, developed by Seiwo Hayami and Woof Inc., was named by someone that lost the spacebar on their keyboard, and sells for slightly more than $10 dues on Steam, and exactly $10 dues on the Google Play Store, or $8 dues on the Apple Store. Now, before you write off this game as cheap garbage though, you need to understand that this is a solo dev project, with the exception of the music and sound effects, and although it looks incredibly rough around the edges, that's because it is. There's a lot of charm hidden underneath though. This is the story of a girl who cried a river and drowned the whole world. No, wait, that's a song. But the world is flooded, but you wouldn't know right away because you start the game in a prison cell. And just like in the story of Cinderella, a magical talking mouse comes to free you. In this case, magical means learned how to pick locks because it seemed like a cool skill to learn and not because they plan on doing anything illegal. The talking aspect isn't magical because you can talk to every animal. According to the lore found in the game, telepathy was figured out at some point, so now we can all communicate. And I'm going to use this newfound telepathy to tell you all about the main menu. The title screen shows a faded version of the main character and the last place you saved, and there is an option menu. While I was concerned there would actually only be a singular option inside, it's actually fairly competent. Separate sound sliders, language settings, and more resolution settings than some AAA games. Unfortunately, some interfaces support controllers and some don't, and there aren't any rebindable controls. However, the game is pretty simple, with just movement and 2 interaction buttons. The music for the main menu is one that I recognise, a piece that I believe we first heard on the channel back when we reviewed 0 Degrees North, 0 Degrees West, Gymnopede No. 1 by Eric Satie. That should also tell you what to expect when it comes to the music in 100animalease. Alright, everyone that just switched their brains off because I was talking about things that aren't gameplay, you can tune back in again, we're done. So, to set the slightly off-balance tone of the game, here are the first 2 things I did in the game. Firstly, I realised that I could use the right thumbstick to zoom the camera in and out, so that was cute. Unfortunately, it always snaps right back in when talking to a character or interacting with something, which is like 99% of what you'll be doing. Secondly, I interacted with a toilet. In my defense, it's right next to the bed, which means that the question mark icon appears as soon as you step out of the bed. I'm just glad it was clean, because not all of them are. Yeah, I checked. A nearby owl basically tells us that we are the chosen one, that every animal has a role to play, and tells us how to save the game, and then promptly buggers off. Thanks, Jupiter. Before I interact with the mouse I mentioned earlier, I noticed that the sprite for the main character is, well, to put it bluntly, pretty awful when viewed as a side profile. Something about the posture and body shape just looks off. But I also noticed that instead of the usual 4-directional movement these games tend to have, it's actually 8-directional, and the sprites when moving diagonally look pretty good by comparison. I make a mental note to try and play the game like a bishop in chess to avoid seeing the side profile, but promptly fail. Anyway, when escaping, the mouse gives you a choice of leaving or not. I didn't check what happens if you say no, but I sincerely hope that the game just ends. I say yes, agree to save the mouse's wife, and we have our first party member, Rat. Ah, shoot! I was calling them a mouse this entire time. Is that racist? Mousist? Ratist? Ratata? Who knows? And more importantly, animals that join your party will literally follow behind you, forming an endless conga line of creatures. This mechanic is used to solve some puzzles by either requiring a line of at least a certain length in order to press multiple switches at the same time, or by needing you to get enough animals onto a single plate to reach a weight threshold. There are plenty of other puzzles scattered around, mostly of the number to letter cipher style, which are used to unlock doors or chests, allowing you to find items that are needed to convince an animal to follow you. Some animals simply require you to speak to them though, rather than making you jump through hoops. On the other hand, some require you to complete minigames or other tasks that aren't obviously called out. One example is the sloth that will only join your party after you complete his claw machine style minigame that is possibly one of the most frustrating experiences I've had recently, as not only does it require a level of multitasking to keep the sloth motivated, the vegetables you need to grab are incredibly unwieldy, meaning you'll often either fail to pick them up or they'll simply refuse to fall into the box. So basically just like a real life claw machine, really. An example of one that isn't specifically called out is the polar bear you find in the kitchen. To convince them to join you, you'll need to cook every possible dish, which can seem a bit daunting given the strangely in-depth cooking mechanics that allow you to combine 2 different ingredients using one of 5 cooking methods, meaning that each ingredient has 20 possible combinations. When you talk to the polar bear, they just tell you that you have permission to use the kitchen and as much rice, pasta, or flour as you want. Weirdly, because there are animals that request specific food before they join you, I thought that completing each of these requests would be the criteria. But it turns out that there's actually one additional meal that isn't requested by anyone, and after cooking that, the polar bear will join you. All of that is to say that the follower system for the animals is used in some creative ways, and I appreciate that there is a decent level of variety in the methods of how you recruit them, even if they are sometimes a bit rough around the edges. Back at the start of the game, Jupiter the owl told us that every living thing has something they can contribute, and this is technically true. Some puzzles or obstacles can only be solved or overcome by having specific animals in your party. Giraffes can reach things up high, the snake can squeeze into vents to find things, the gorilla can move debris out of the way, and that's about it actually. The rest just follow along and help with the floor switches, so if you count just standing around as contributing, then I guess that's true. Speaking of, the walking/running animations for the animals are pretty janky, often not able to do complete walk cycles, resulting in a lot of jittering as they move between the stationary and moving positions. This is especially noticeable with animals like the owl, which are on the ground when standing still and suddenly flying when walking. I also experienced a bug early in the game where after exploring this room full of barrels where a maze is hidden behind the visuals, I ended up leaving the room missing almost all of my followers. Thankfully, they came back after restarting the game, so I can only assume they got stuck on something and then bugged out. So what exactly are we saving all these animals from? Well, it's not really explained. From reading the scattered lore notes, there was some kind of virus outbreak that led to everything collapsing, and it also caused animals to become smarter. This also had the side effect of some animals experiencing thermal runaway, causing them to become extremely aggressive and hostile, and the only way to return them to normal is to douse them in water. Sadly, you're trapped at the bottom of this ship, and you'll need to get past all the traps, puzzles, and animals to reach the water up on the deck. So, given that so far we've only recruited a rat, it's time to get to work, and one of the first choices we have is to choose a name. But actually, it's not, because it's just a setup for a dad joke. Selecting Enter Name just results in the rat calling you Ms. Enter Name, and your name is never mentioned ever again. This is representative of the type of humour you can expect to find scattered throughout the game, so if it didn't make you chuckle a little, then this game's humour might not be for you. The writing is also generally a little all over the place, as the dev has clearly tried to impart as much personality as possible into each of the 100 animals without being overly verbose. They'll tell you about their thoughts or ambitions, likes or dislikes, depending on the particular animal. It's a nice touch, but they'll also rarely ever say anything after they've been recruited, so you get a little snapshot and that's all you get. Ah, but what about the combat, I hear you asking? Surprise! There isn't any. Well, okay, there is, but it's more of a mini-game than actual combat, and it only happens twice in the entire 3 to 4 hours it will take you to beat the game. The first instance is actually in an arcade machine, and the combat system is pretty simple. You have 3 actions to choose from. charge, guard, and attack, and whichever action your cursor is on at the end of the countdown is what you'll perform, so quick thinking is key. You can't attack without charging first, and of course an attack will use up a charge. You can guard to negate all damage from an incoming attack, but if both you and the enemy attack at the same time, they'll be negated. The enemy also has about twice as many hearts as you, with every successful attack depleting 1 heart. Not gonna lie, I struggled with this one. Not only are you playing mind games with yourself trying to predict the enemy actions, the amount of time you have to make decisions slowly decreases, so the pace of the battle gets faster and faster and faster. The second instance of combat is right at the end of the game, when you encounter Noah on the upper deck of the ship. Or at least, I think it's Noah. It might also just straight up be God. Their name is displayed as Homo sapiens though, which leads me more towards the former than the latter, but it could also just be a stand-in to represent the last remnants of humanity. But you have to admit they look pretty close to how Noah is often depicted. Also, it's very apparent that you and this Noah/Homo sapiens guy are not the same. I mean, just look at the difference between the character models. They might be the same height, but the player's head is twice the size of theirs. Noah isn't too happy about us wanting to steer the boat back to land though, and combat begins for the second and last time. It's more or less the same as the first time, except there's no time limit for each turn, and that you have a how to play button that just tells you that there's no time for a tutorial, you're in a fight. Oh, and I guess there's the fact that Noah has like 1,000 hearts. But that's okay, because every animal that has joined your party will join in the fight and adds 1 damage to each attack. I quite like this approach, because it means you can finish the game early after having about half of the animals join your party, or you can wait to fight Noah until everyone has joined you. Having mastered the tutorial fight earlier, I naturally beat Noah on my first try, even though I was down to 1 heart left for the majority of the fight. Why are we fighting Noah anyway? Well, my theory is that it's because he was incredibly biased when choosing what animals were allowed on the boat. It seems like he sent out invitations to the celebrities of the animal world and everyone else was left for themselves. I mean, the fish will be fine and so will most birds, but what about the flightless ones? We've got owls and penguins on the boat, but no emus or kiwis. We've got cows and sheep, but no pigs. Well, I guess there was only room for 100 animals, and so the list had to be cut somewhere. After beating Noah, the credits roll showing the ship approaching land, and then you're back on the boat. I appreciate that you can continue playing if you want to finish recruiting all 100 animals, and you now have a +1 to your score because Noah himself joins your party. I was having a pleasant enough time that I decided to fully complete the game to see if anything else would happen, and sure enough, there's a secret ending. And of course, it's a dance party. To address the elephant in the room, or both of them in this case, 100animalease is a pretty rough game. Unless you're a multi-talented genius with a generous supply of free time, this is usually the result of a solo dev project. At its core, 100animalease is a fairly bare-bones RPG with surface-level characters and writing, a bare-bones plot that was obviously influenced by the events surrounding COVID, and a handful of fairly basic puzzles thrown in. Some of the puzzles have some loose ends as well that I wasn't able to piece together. There are some messages scrolled on walls that led me to an interesting hint about a location that I couldn't find anywhere and that I couldn't find anyone on the internet talking about. And there's a note that Noah comments on if you take him there after winning the fight, but I couldn't figure out what it related to. Maybe these were oversights by the dev, or maybe I'm just not smart enough to piece it together. But to come back to my original point, what the game does have is a lot of charm. There wasn't anything that blew me away, nothing I haven't seen before, and certainly nothing that I haven't seen done better. But it drew me in with a sense of curiosity, and I found myself wanting to see what the next bizarre interaction with the next animal would be. It's also short enough at around 3 to 4 hours long that you don't really feel like you've wasted your time, and the absolute absurd insanity of the final boss fight pulled everything together in the most beautiful way. At $10 dues and 25 cents, it's a bit pricey, so if you're interested in checking this game out for yourself, I'd wait to pick it up on sale. As I said, it's not going to make anyone's top 10 list, but it's an interesting enough game that was clearly created with passion, even if the final result would basically only score a passing grade. And that's why my final score for 100animalease is an otter that tells you what their next move will be in a round of rock, paper, scissors out of 10. You know exactly what is going to happen, but you also kinda don't, but what you do know is that whatever happens will be cute, charming, and a little bit weird. Welcome to the end of the video. As always, thank you to all the Crusaders and Templar Knights for supporting the channel, especially our noble knights Azazel, Daydos, Kartoffeljäger 3, Negi Malevolent, Chev_, and the Crabs. And an extra special thank you to our 5 Knights of the Holy Grail: 100% Normal Human, Automatistic, Theox Card Expo, Freaky Feline, and Matey8. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the membership options below, or just remember to like and subscribe, that helps too. That's all for now, so if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. And until next time, take care.